So I just want to make it clear, as I often do, that I'm not here presenting myself as any kind of authority in anyone's life um, other than my own. And I look for and embrace as much in diversity, the diversity of the universe. So I kind of see people and mediums um, as a cosmos, as a galaxy of people. Um, More than ever now, it seems like because there's so much fear and fear-based behavior and thinking and speech going on in the planet in the past few years, and people haven't stopped not being nice to one another. People are being kind of mean to another. That that it we automatically start looking for ways to soothe ourselves and to feel better and to find hope where we were feeling hopeless. And so, whether people know it or not, that there's much more help for us and support from what we could call the world of spirit, or other dimensions, and people are exploring all kinds of things. So I just want to say that I'm embracing all of that and open to learning new things. But also, if something doesn't sit right with me, um, I acknowledge that as well too. Because I'm also a psychotherapist. I've been a licensed psychotherapist here in New York City for decades, and um, one of the main language that I teach my patients or bring them to an understanding to, which the books also utilize, is the use of feelings and emotions as our guides through life. And most of us have been taught to ignore our feelings or kind of limit our feelings and put thinking overhead. At least in the West, the educational structure is that little kids come into school, and little kids, when we're little kids, we don't have any problems at all. Like we're here to have fun and to play. And suddenly now you have these people of power telling us that we have to learn how to solve problems to their satisfaction, and we're going to be graded or punished based upon that, and we have to learn how to create problems of our own. So our brains are often overtrained to overthink things and to ignore our feelings. And our teachers may have said, it doesn't really matter, we don't care how you feel, we just want to know what you think. And so it takes quite a while when I ask people, how are you feeling about that? They give me a thought back. And so much of my experience in mediumship, which lines up with many other mediums that I've known over many years, is that it's a language of emotion that we're sharing with people's spirit, that we may not have the same cultural language or social understandings, but we all know what it feels like to be sad or happy or lonely or confused. And so a lot of people perhaps get in their own way because they're trying to think their way through mediumship and communicate by thought. And a lot of people think telepathy is the way to go and stuff like that. And it is kind of an exchange of information, but again, it's all emotional information. Emotions carry information. And the main thing I guess I want to emphasize is, if you're exploring your own mediumship or other people's mediumship in some way, is to know that our feelings always tell us the truth. Our feelings never lie to us. Our thoughts lie to us a lot, or kind of withhold information or try to talk us out of our feelings. But so a lot of, if you're trying to develop as a medium, then you have to learn how to develop your sensitivity to emotions. And Wendy was very accurate in saying that these books are approaching life and our experience through our emotional, as an emotional experience, as an emotional journey, and grief is that too. And recently, in March, my 18-year-old animal companion, Fiona, transitioned, and it was really, really, really very hard, and still is in many ways. And these books have helped me an awful lot in that as well. And some people expressed to me surprise that I would have such a hard time with grief. They would think that I'm an expert on grief or something because I'm a therapist and a medium. And as Wendy and Karen have said, your sensitivity increases, so you feel more. And with more feeling comes more information. And it also takes some courage to be able to allow ourselves to feel some feelings that don't necessarily feel good. But I also want to emphasize that, as far as I can tell, the nature of what we're calling the universe is based on harmony and good and nothing else. And then if something goes out of harmony, if bad weather happens or something, you can see in nature and in our bodies that there's always this natural tendency to reharmonize. And the more we learn how to get out of the way of that, the quicker it will happen. So that was my whole theory on, out of the first book, the spirit people used grief as a common thread to use as examples throughout the whole book to kind of hold it, to sew it together, because everyone on the planet, human beings anyway, will experience grief. And that's how the second book came about. As I said, well, that's, I'd like to know more about that. And I'm glad I did, because the book has served me very well in my own grief experience. So the idea of being able to tune into feelings, because the people in spirit that I know, the process has always been, long before I even learned how to talk, was I was having emotional relationships, emotional conversations with people in spirit. And I assumed everyone else around me was as well. And because there was mediumship on both sides of my family, it was recognized, but it wasn't seen as out of the ordinary. So the idea of, even before we speak, we're having relationships. And so we see small children having relationships with people in spirit. We call them their imaginary friends, but they're not really. So I guess I'll turn it over, because what I like to do is, at this point, take advantage of other people's experience and knowledge and in exploration, and to see what comes out of this. And also, I've already taken the liberty of inviting people in spirit, my guides and guardians, whatever you want to call them, to be here with us too, and to participate in it. So if anyone feels inspired to share some kind of information from spirit, feel free to do so. So I would be interested in hearing too people's experience with the book or books, if they've had a chance of going through them, because I know they're quite dense. And not hard to read, but not an easy read. Like, it takes a lot of time, because they're multidimensional. There's what I call infrared energies and subsonic energies woven into the text. And these books took years to write. The first one took probably 8 or 9 years at the most to do, 24/7, just coming through, trying to put the emotional language of spirit into our very limiting language. As wonderful as English is, they're still very, very limiting. So if anyone wants to share their experiences about the book or have questions about certain aspects of it, now's the time. Okay, I'm done. Lourdes?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
It has been wonderful for me to see you. I bought your book around 2012. It has been like, sometimes it has created me, I don't know why, a lot of anxiety. Other times I get it and I drop it, and I get it and then I say, oh, it's very clear, I'm gonna finish it now, and then I drop it. Just like that. So the first thing, of course, is thank you for writing that book. Absolutely, absolutely, it has been with me. But it's also similar to my approach. I'm also a psychotherapist, to my approach to the other life. I'm not a psychic. I'm not a medium. I'm not clairvoyant. But I want to open up. I was talking to Karen and to Wendy right now, telling them that for real, I'm ready, and I want to feel my energy open and everything. But my brain stops me, and my personality stops me, and whatever. So I just want to share it. I don't know if this is a question or not. I just wanted to put this here, and anything that flows out of you would be appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. That was very articulate, which is not easy to do. But yeah, I've had the same experience, like this kind of thing too, because it's almost like a living experience, and people have shared over and over again. They'll ask me a question, they'll write to me and ask me a question, very specific. And I said, well, you go to page 210, and it's the second paragraph there. And they'll go find it and say, but that wasn't there before. I'm pretty sure that wasn't there before. I'm sure it was there before. I said, yeah, it was.
That's true.
Gary Langley?
Yeah, hi, August.
Hi, Gary.
You know, when I started reading this book, and I think I wrote August an email and said, this book is speaking to me beyond the written words. And he wrote back and said, it was designed that way. This is not a book that you're going to totally absorb in a month or a week. It keeps opening up new ideas within you, pathways within you. And I just really want to thank you for all the time and effort that you put into writing this book, because I think it's very valuable. And you keep stating through the book, if you don't understand this right now, just that's okay. Some part of you, some inner part of you gets it. And I think that's really important. And I also wanted to state, if any of you are reading the book now, and questions arise, because you're not going to get done with it real quick. We're presenting this book, The Risen, on the Afterlife Book Club next month. And then in November, August will be with us, and you can ask him questions that may arise between now and then. So I just wanted to say that if something else comes up in your mind that you want clarified. So, but August, thank you for this incredible work.
Thank you. And it's okay. I use time differently than most people around me, it seems. So it's okay to contact me directly and reach out in the email or something. I'm not a famous person, so I don't have to worry about any of that. Like, and I know I like getting into conversations as much as I can. I have a very, very busy, thriving private psychotherapy practice here as well, so I don't know how I do it all, but I'm always open to questions or ideas. But also I'd refer people, if you go to the website at the top, there's a button that says there's one that says podcast, and there's one that says blog. And the blog has a lot of information, and it goes way back, even as the book began trying to manifest itself. And I was working it out and seeing what it looked like on screen, because the book wasn't my idea at all, just so you know. It wasn't my bright idea, it was Tim's. And it was also the collective that I call the Risen Collective of innumerable artists and scientists and researchers and healers on the spirit side, who saw something in the relationship that I had with Tim and our own sense of being, that it was just set up the perfect parameters for an experiment to see what would happen. Like, these two resonate so much, and August resonates with us, and Tim has been resonating with August. And what if we can sort of see what happens? Can we transmit information? And they just asked me simply, you know, would you help us write a book? And I unknowingly said yes, but they're not knowing I was getting into. So the information came very, very, very slowly. And for those who, I get questions from people who want to write their own books or feel inspired to, which is great. In my case, after 2 years, and there was quite a large amount of material, I was frustrated and exhausted and burn out from it. And so the spirit people gave me a year off. They said, okay, just don't do anything. And then we're going to represent it to you. And then they did, like they restructured it and put it in chapters and stuff. It's quite fascinating. So it's just my way of encouraging people. Like it takes a lot of effort. As anyone who's developed for mediumship knows, it takes a lot of effort and dedication and commitment to do that. So even reading this book probably takes some diligence or to read the books. I don't find them hard to read at all, but that's just me. Next up is Art.
Yes. I wonder how often you find people who are purposely prolonging their feelings of grief and emotional distress.
I do. I have been doing that. What makes you ask?
I've seen some people who've written, especially on YouTube, but how they're still grieving somebody after 2 or 3 years. And I just wondered, it sounds to me like they're purposely prolonging their grief.
It may sound like that to you, but who's to say what their experience is? Because time just does all kinds of weird things, and everyone experiences time in a different way. And I think it's mentioned in one of the books that grief seems to be something that, so my original question about grief, because I noticed it was this common thread woven throughout around the first book, is like, can it be transformed? Does it have any use? What good is it? Like, why do we have to go through it so long and terribly? And the question, that's how the second book came back. They said, yes, it can be transformed, and this is how it can be doing it. But in spite of the transformation, apparently it stays with us in some form for the rest of our earthly existence, which is very interesting to me. And part of it, I suspect, is because, as mentioned before, one has to be really sensitive to feel very deeply and very strongly, and to also realize that the suffering is not unnecessary suffering, but necessary suffering. So whether, you might be talking about people who just really feel like they need a lot of soothing and a lot of attention, and they're kind of doing the poor me thing, and they just want lots of hugs. Hopefully that they get it. But there's an aspect of our mentality that we call the ego mind, which is very different than what Freud or Jung or Fritz Perls or other people talked about. This risen explicitly wanted people to understand that there is this aspect of our mind and how it came about and how it interferes. And sometimes the ego mind will, which is not a real person, but wants to be a real person in some kind of a way, will take a hold of our suffering or our grief and try to amplify it in order to make us more afraid and get more power. There's a whole chapter on the ego mind, which some people get very stuck on, but I encourage people to see if it helps. Right, and so because there are some intensely multidimensional parts of the book or aspects, there's this little thing, I just have a copy of the book here, that's situated at various intentional places where it says, these words may not make conscious sense at this time, but my spiritual senses comprehend and retain this knowledge for authentic self. Right? I think someone had mentioned that earlier as well too. I remember Michael Tim, the journalist we all know and love, was very thankful for that as well too, that it kind of reassured that I don't have to try so hard and think my way through this, but there's kind of this feeling thing. And well, we all know that when someone is in grief, they're in, I'll borrow a word from the Tibetans, they're in their own bardo, their own dimension. It's like this kind of protective bubble, and not a lot of light and sound gets in that they can really focus on, which is why it's up to us to make sure that they're safe and secure and get rest and get food, because they can't really process very much. And so trying to feel better by reading something as difficult as this, stuff gets in, but you just don't know it. There's kind of a time delay, I guess. And how that happens could happen, it could come to you in a dream where someone says something, and there's a lot of synchronicity that happens in people's lives. They hear something on the radio or see something on the internet that suddenly, like, they have this aha moment. Well, it's probably, I mean, quite shock. It's kind of a shock to realize that this is not the end, as religion or other people might have suggested, that this is the beginning. And so you're unlearning a lot of stuff as well that you may not even know that you learned. So there's that process, which takes a lot of strength and diligence. And unlearning something, especially belief systems, is very hard to do. And the books talk about belief systems. And belief systems, as far as I can tell, appear to be constructed to avoid tampering. So as soon as we try to mess around or change a belief, there's these aspects that kind of shut down, or and indeed people go to war over beliefs. They kill each other over beliefs.
I do.
Yeah. And so we'll even have these internal wars and battles with ourselves when a belief needs to be changed. So there's a lovely passage in there that one of the spirit people suggested. Someone's yelling at me, calling them spirit people. Stop calling us that. That's why I call them the risen. There's a lovely passage, I'll get back to that. There's a lovely passage about belief systems, to sort of imagine that you're in this wonderful, beautiful field, a meadow that you can kind of see, and you can see sort of some trees or hedges in the distance, but there's different fences constructed across the field. So if you want to get over to the other end, your curiosity wants you to go over there, you got to try to climb over these different fences, and some of them might be barbed wire and others might be really high or made of brick. And so it's to demonstrate the understanding that our beliefs are restrictive, whether we know it or not. They're about boundaries as well too, which are necessary for a human being to navigate through life. But belief systems also can then become restrictive, and we become kind of trapped in those things. So one of the things, both books are kind of, I would call psychoanalytical, psychodynamic, scientific text to help people decide if they want to change their beliefs, and to decide which ones are restricting them and which ones are enabling them, which ones are serving them, which aren't anymore. And it's quite simple, but not easy, because a belief is just a thought that we keep thinking over and over and over again, or we keep listening to, and then our brain learns through repetition. And that's how it makes neurosynaptic connections. And then one day, like I learned the multiplication tables by repeating it over and over. One day my brain said, okay, shut up, I get it. You don't have to do that anymore. And so once that is synaptically connected, it's very hard to unlearn these kinds of things. So shock often kind of suspends reality around us and provides a buffer. And that's where people have these amazing experiences that they're not sure they should tell other people after someone has transitioned. Like they have not just dreams, but visitations or messages left on their answering machine, or just some stranger comes up and hands them a note or something like that. It's that bardo in Tibetan afterlife exploration. A bardo is an intermediate place that people travel through in some kind of a way. And so I've been describing that I'm in a bardo of grief. I've been in a bardo of grief for the past few months. And so it's kind of disorienting and it takes time. And I found the books extremely helpful years after I wrote them. I didn't expect them to be as helpful as they have been.